Watson Coleman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I rise in strong opposition to this cobbled mess of a budget resolution. This resolution is a Republican betrayal of the middle class. As one of the newest members of this committee, I find it important to raise how evil I find this proposed budget resolution to be. My Republican colleagues want to double down on damaging tax cuts and Jobs Act, which overwhelmingly benefited the ultra-rich and the corporations at the expense of everyday Americans. This resolution instructs the Ways and Means Committee to find $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. At the same time, this resolution will instruct several other committees to cut spending by at least $2 trillion to offset the costs of the tax cuts, which will benefit the uber-rich. This amounts to a plundering of our government and the services that it provides each and every American. So what are they cutting? Well, let's look at the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is instructed to cut $880 billion in spending. Now, the budget resolution doesn't tell the committees what programs they need to cut to reach this goal, but the chairman was very generous to share a list of what he and other Republicans think that they can cut. Medicaid is a prime target for cuts under the Republican ripoff plan. This would include pulling federal dollars out of state Medicaid programs and forcing each state to take on more of the cost, which we know will cause state governments to cut back on the type of necessary health services that are available to Medicaid beneficiaries and to impose onerous work requirements on folks, the vast majority of whom are already working. Nearly 80 million Americans rely on Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program for their care. And in my district alone, at least 103,000 residents have access to affordable health care because of the federal investments in these programs. Imagine telling these families that they could lose health coverage because Republicans want to use that money to cut the tax bills for corporations whose profits have never been higher. That is heartless. This budget resolution will also lead to a tax on the Affordable Care Act, a favorite target of the Republicans for the last 15 years. On the same list of proposed cuts as Medicaid, Republicans suggest over $100 billion in cuts to the ACA. This includes repealing the Prevention Public Health Fund and limiting health program eligibility based on citizenship status. Energy and commerce might be the Republicans' biggest target, but it isn't the only place they are cutting funds from to pay for their tax breaks. The Republicans will instruct the Agriculture Committee to cut $230 billion in spending. This will translate to cuts in SNAP, which feeds 40 million Americans, including children, seniors, veterans, and working parents. How can my colleagues across the aisle take money that is meant to put food on people's tables and instead use that money so a CEO can deduct the cost of a private jet? The Education and Workforce Committee is instructed to cut $330 billion, which will lead to massive defunding of education programs and end much of the federal support for student loan programs. And while thousands of students struggle to pay off their never-ending debt to further their education, Republicans look for ways to help the ultra-rich avoid paying their estate taxes. It is truly hard to imagine how a party that prides itself on being believers in Christian values look at this resolution and think this would benefit the common man. Unlike the president, I have read the Bible, and I know the teachings of Jesus. I do not recall cutting aid from the poor, the weak, or the huddled masses in favor of those who hoard their wealth as one of his sermons. It is hypocritical of my Republican colleagues to say they care for the American people, because if they cared, they would never have brought this resolution to the committee. The only reason we are meeting right here, right now, is because House Republicans don't want to be upstaged by their colleagues in the Senate. The Senate Budget Committee was ahead in putting together their resolution. And not to be outdone, House Republicans who still can't agree among themselves how much they want to hurt the American people decided to bring this farce of a budget resolution to markup today. This resolution, again, is a betrayal to every hardworking American. I strongly express my opposition to this wholly insufficient budget resolution for the sake of American people. We must not let this resolution leave this committee. I ask my Republican colleagues, where is your humanity? I yield the remainder of my time.